Calvin Miller was a 32-year-old guy living in Austin, Texas. The kind of man you'd look at and instantly think, yep, this guy probably orders takeout a little too often. It wasn't that Calvin was unattractive. He was just comfortably round in a way that suggested he and exercise had agreed long ago to stay out of each other's lives. He didn't hate working out. He just treated it the way most Americans treat YouTube ads. He knew it was necessary. He knew it was good for him. But somehow he always managed to skip. Every year Calvin told his friends, "This year I'm gonna get serious about the gym." And every year he repeated the exact same line like he had copy-pasted it from last year's resolution list. One morning, just like any other, Calvin bent down to tie his shoes. Except his stomach reached his knees before his hands did. He straightened up, stared at himself like a man looking at a suspiciously high electric bill, and muttered, "Okay, maybe this is getting serious." In a burst of hopeful impulsiveness, he signed up for a gym membership. But the moment he walked in, he regretted everything. Because inside, everyone looked like they were auditioning for the Avengers. The guys were lifting weights heavier than Calvin's entire future. The women were squatting like they were keeping the US economy stable. And in the middle of all that was Calvin, who looked like a misplaced potato in a crate of organic produce. His first day at the gym was such a disaster that if there were an Oscar for most painful first attempt, Calvin would have won with zero competition. He set the treadmill to speed 3 but looked like he was running the Boston Marathon. He tried lifting 20-pound dumbbells and nearly introduced his face to the floor. He attempted a push-up and got 1.5. The half happened because he slipped. People in the gym stared at him like he was a confused baby seal trying to climb a tree. Calvin felt a wave of embarrassment wash over him, sat on a bench, pulled out his phone, opened the gym app, and was one click away from canceling his membership. Right then, a man in his early 70s walked past. The guy was skinny, small, looked like a gust of wind could knock him over, and yet he was curling 2 35-pound dumbbells like they were bags of groceries. Calvin stared in disbelief. "No way," he whispered, as if he'd just seen magic. The old man put the weights down, gave Calvin a knowing smile, the kind of smile that said, "I've been exactly where you are," and said, "Son, I started working out when I was 58. Calvin blinked. 58. The old man nodded casually, then picked up the 40-pound dumbbells like they were air. "You don't have to be great to start," he said, "but you must start to be great." For some reason, that sentence hit Calvin harder than any motivational poster he'd ever seen. Not because it sounded profound, but because the old man said it while casually lifting weights Calvin couldn't even dream of touching. In that moment, Calvin realized he had no excuse. If a 70-something man could start at 58, then Calvin, at 32, had absolutely no right to sit there pouting like someone who just lost a donut. The next day, Calvin returned to the gym. Then the next day. Then the next. He didn't magically transform into the Hulk. He didn't get abs in 2 weeks. He still got tired, still gasped for breath, still felt weaker than the treadmill itself. But he showed up, and showing up was everything. He went from 1.5 push-ups to 3, then to 5. He went from running 5 minutes to 8. He started getting used to the satisfying kind of exhaustion, the kind that felt like his brain was being reset after every workout. There were days he failed. Days he was convinced he wasn't improving. Days he skipped, just one day. And that day tried to snowball into 3. But every time he remembered the old man lifting weights like loaves of bread, Calvin came back. And he realized something important. Greatness doesn't come from a single big moment. It comes from showing up, especially on the days you don't feel like it. A year passed, and Calvin had lost 26 kilograms. He could run 5 kilometers without stopping. He was lifting 50-pound dumbbells. And, strangely enough, the same gym where people once pitied him, he had become someone people now asked for advice. One afternoon, a young guy nervously walked up to Calvin and asked, "Bro, I'm really weak. How do I even start?" Calvin looked at him, and suddenly saw himself from a year ago, insecure, awkward, scared, but carrying a small spark of hope. Calvin smiled, repeating the sentence that changed everything for him. You don't have to be great to start, but you must start to be great." The young man nodded, encouraged. Calvin returned to his workout, sweat dripping on the floor, a proud smile on his face, because he finally understood something he never knew a year ago. Anyone can become great, but only if they dare to begin, no matter how small the first step is. And sometimes, all it takes to change your entire life is one sentence from a 72-year-old man at the gym.